Was Jesus married? There are 4 ways that this question can come up, so I want to help you respond to each one of them, but I gotta catch a flight back to Dallas, so let's talk on the way. Hey everyone, it's your apologetics guy, Mikel, coming to you here from Moody Bible Institute in downtown Chicago. Chicago is a very cool city. Taught a class today on the New Testament canon and also a class on apologetics. Had a really good time with the students, enjoyed my time here meeting with faculty at Moody, and just love walking around the city. It's pretty cool. Was Jesus married? Or did Jesus have a wife? You know, that's a real question someone really asked me at a church that I used to go to, and it's something that a lot of people who have read Dan Brown's novel, The Da Vinci Code, that's something that they come away asking too. So I looked into this, and you know what I found? There's actually no evidence that Jesus was married at all. In fact, there's a virtual consensus among scholars that Jesus was single. But there are 4 ways that this question can come up, so I want to help you respond to each one of them, but I gotta catch a flight back to Dallas, so let's talk on the way. Now the first challenge goes like this. Was Jesus married to the woman who anointed him? You know, some people wonder if the sinful woman who anointed Jesus was actually his wife. They want to say that the whole situation wouldn't have been as offensive to a Jewish audience if the woman was married to Jesus. But if you read Luke, Luke tells us that the whole situation was in fact offensive, which is why the Pharisees said, if this man were a prophet, he would have known who and what sort of woman this is who is touching him, for she is a sinner. That's Luke 7:39. You know, that objection wouldn't make a lot of sense if the woman was actually Jesus' wife. There's no evidence that Jesus was married to the woman who anointed him in the gospel, according to Luke. Hey, welcome back to campus here at Dallas Theological Seminary. Was Jesus married to Mary Magdalene? Sometimes people say that it wasn't too common for Jewish women to travel with men in Jesus' culture, and that's why they wonder if the only reason that it was okay for Mary Magdalene to travel with Jesus was because they were actually married. But see, here's the thing. In Luke 8, we read that there were actually 3 women who traveled with Jesus. There was Susanna, there was Joanna, and Mary Magdalene. And Luke doesn't say anything that sounds like any of them were married to Jesus. And plus, we know that Jesus challenged the way that the culture thought about men and women relating to each other. You know, think about him talking to the Samaritan woman, the woman at the well, right? It's not like having women do ministry with Jesus was totally out of character for him either. So I don't think that should raise suspicions about any kind of special relationship that Jesus might have had with Mary Magdalene. Even when he was dying on the cross, Jesus didn't show any special attention to Mary. In fact, he showed attention to another Mary, who was actually his mom, and to John. So no, there's no evidence at all that shows that Jesus was married to Mary Magdalene. So was Jesus married because he was a rabbi? Some people say that since Jesus was a rabbi, he would have gotten married because that was the tradition of the rabbis. But that's not quite right. You know, even though people called Jesus teacher and rabbi, he actually wasn't an official Jewish rabbi. And this is one reason why the Jewish leaders were always challenging his authority to interpret the law. But now think about this. Jesus teaching about becoming a metaphorical eunuch for the sake of the kingdom, that points us to his own example of being single, and it points us to his devotion to God. So the question, was Jesus married because he was a rabbi? That starts from a faulty premise. And there is nothing in that question that challenges the scholarly consensus that Jesus was single. Now, I produce the Table podcast here at Dallas Seminary, and before we get into the 4th way that this challenge comes up, I want you to hear how my mentor, Darrell Bock, answered the question, was Jesus married? And see what he told me about that alleged Gospel of Jesus' wife fragment. One that I got last Easter from a Christian who went to my church, who read a book and was curious about it. Was Jesus married? Darrell, I'll ask you. You wrote a little thing in Breaking the Da Vinci Code about that.
You've got to ask where the sources are. Now, there was a lot of hubbub about a decade ago about a text that supposedly said that Jesus was married. Subsequent research on this text showed that it was basically a fraud. There isn't any real evidence that Jesus was ever married. It's a speculation. I mean, it'll start with an observation like, well, most Jewish men were supposed to get married and pursued marriage. That's true. But Jesus wasn't like most Jewish men.
Mm-hmm. Well, good morning. It's a nice overcast day today in Dallas. Now, I've heard some people ask, was Jesus married because he was Jewish? Now, you might have heard that idea, this idea that Jesus had to be married because he was Jewish, as if all Jewish men back in the day totally felt pressured to marry by their culture. But that's just not true. It's based on a false premise. We know that there were first century Jews who chose to remain single, and their singleness was nothing to be ashamed of in their culture. In fact, some people even looked up to them for it. But there's a couple of things I want you to know so you're prepared to think through this challenge. So let me show you a couple things right now. Now, there's a Hellenistic Jew by the name of Philo of Alexandria, and he says that not all Jews thought they had to be married. Actually, some pious Jews tried not to get married as a part of their religious devotion. And you can read about that here in Hypothetica in this part of Philo. You know, there was a Jewish sect called the Essenes, and they produced the Dead Sea Scrolls that were found in Qumran. And they were super concerned about being faithful Jews, but they actually chose to be celibate for religious reasons, to keep God as their top priority. Here we go. There's also a first century Jewish historian named Josephus, and he says that for the Essenes, celibacy wasn't required, but it was strongly encouraged. And in his book, The Jewish War, he goes into this. He says that they admired abstinence, even to the point where he says they neglect wedlock. He also wrote a series called The Antiquities of the Jews, and in Book 18, he said that many Jews even admired the Essenes because of their religious commitment. So my point is that not all Jewish men felt compelled to get married, and their singleness was nothing to be ashamed of because it was part of their religious devotion. You know, Paul actually mentions a similar idea in a Christian context in 1 Corinthians 7, and that brings me to an extra observation that I want to share with you right now. Actually, first, let's stop by Preview Day for a snack. And there's red velvet bundt cakes. That's amazing. Thank you.
So hopefully today you got just a glimpse of what DTS, what seminary is like.
Well, I just had a great time talking with some people who are interested in the apologetics program here at Dallas Seminary. And hey, do me a favor and hit like right now if you're getting some value from this video. I want to give you a little bonus observation to think about when it comes to asking, did Jesus have a wife, or was Jesus married? And here it is. Think about this. The Apostle Paul never referred to Jesus in a couple of discussions about marriage and singleness. You know, on the one hand, he didn't appeal to Jesus when he told the Corinthians about how a pastor had the right to be married in 1 Corinthians 9. You know, if Jesus was married, that would be the perfect time to say, since Jesus was married, then all pastors can be married too. You know, on the other hand, when Paul gives his own personal advice about staying single, he doesn't mention Jesus either. You know, that's because he wasn't telling Christians, he don't want to say that all Christians had to stay single in order to be devoted to God. So he didn't say, since Jesus was single, all Christians should be single too. I mean, think about that. Jesus never taught that, and putting something like that down, that would put an end to Christian families. That would totally put an end to the Christian movement, right? So the fact that Paul didn't say anything about Jesus' marital status while talking about marriage, that makes good sense if Jesus was actually single. So, was Jesus married? No. All the data supports the fact that Jesus was single. Jewish culture did understand and appreciate singleness, especially when you connected it to a lifestyle of being devoted to God. So let me know in the comments which one of these 4 challenges that you hear the most. Or let me know if there's another question about Jesus that comes up in your spiritual conversations. Love to hear what you have to say and engage with you in the comments. You know, a lot of people have told me the question, did Jesus even exist? That's the big one that they get. And I've got a whole presentation on that I want you to check out. So I'll link to it below so you can see that presentation. Thanks for joining me on the vlog. I'm your apologetics guy, Dr. Mikel del Rosario. Please like and subscribe to the channel. And until next time, keep the faith.